Why politics is a cesspit. This is the Monday line for the 4th of February. I'm Dennis Campbell, and welcome to Worldview. Being in opposition once meant spirited debate, fighting like cats and dogs, and ultimately both sides calling the question to a vote. Not anymore. In the US and the UK, politics have become blood sports. The US Republican, also known as the GOP Tea Party, and the UK Conservative Tories have decided that craven self-interest above all, which was almost always disguised in gentlemanly debate, is now the only way. Gone forever is any pretense of decorum. It's our way or the highway, and it's produced a UK triple-dip recession, and the US is heading towards a similar fate. If a party's in the minority, as is the case in the US Senate with the Republicans, they use procedural filibusters to stop every item on the president's agenda. Whether they be judicial and cabinet appointments, they're all stopped dead. If they're in government, as is the case with the Tories in the UK House of Commons and the Republican-controlled US House, they'll do whatever they wish, extorting and beating others into submission to their way of thinking. Now, don't be lulled into thinking Washington or Westminster are becoming less dysfunctional because they grudgingly agree something must be done on guns and immigration in the USA, or provide cuts by the Tories to the NHS and other benefit programs. Both sides have craven agendas that are not dissimilar. Gut the public safety net and rig the system so the rich pay less taxes. To do that, parties privatize everything that can be used to benefit corporate donors with fat contracts. It's prisons in the United States and entire police forces here in the UK. And make certain that when a member leaves government, they land a cushy influence peddling job as a lobbyist, a lawyer, or public affairs director sitting on multiple corporate boards. And as for doing their representative job, meeting the needs of the constituents, they pretend to care about them during the time votes are needed to keep their job. Otherwise, most ignore them and serve their corporate masters above all. It was not always this way. It also never was the utopian way of Jimmy Stewart in the film Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. You know, the one where he leads a filibuster until he drops. I guess that probably needed a spoiler alert. But there have always been bad apples in both countries, yet the vast majority of lawmakers in the 70s and 80s were motivated by a desire to serve others. This crowd, they only serve themselves. And even though President Ronald Reagan, who was a Republican, and House Speaker Tip O'Neill, who was a Democrat, fought like cats and dogs over their work, they remained civil to each other and could celebrate a job well done. If they both hated the outcome, they knew it was probably right for the country. And also they could disagree without becoming personally disagreeable. Anyone watching the Republicans savage one of their own party members last week, Chuck Hagel, who's seeking appointment to be the U.S. Defense Secretary, could be excused for asking why these senators were being so rude and dismissive to a fellow former Republican senator. There was for decades a sense of duty in the House of Commons. Members were nowhere near as rude and boisterous 15 years ago as they are today. Now even those who follow a sense of duty to serve their country and are chosen to be a member of the cabinet are savaged and pilloried by their own party. Why? Because today there's no middle ground. Moderate Republicans are thrown out of the party, and Tories have no hope of winning a majority in Westminster without rigging voting constituency district lines. The Tories lost their vote last week because their coalition partners would not go along with the scheme. But the U.S. House GOP so gerrymandered districts that a majority is almost guaranteed until the next census in 2020. Despite more people voting for change in the House in 2012, the GOP maintained a slender lead as the Democrats picked up 8 seats overall and should have taken control based on popular vote totals. Republicans also forced their members to take ideological purity tests and pledged to never raise taxes. And if they drift towards the center or show signs of compromise, they face the prospects of a primary challenger before their next election. That makes them a lame duck because so few voters, except the rabid opposition, even bother to vote in these preliminary contests, and that tilts their party even further to the rabid right. Here in the UK, the Tories seem headed for defeat in 2015, but the Labour team is not exactly setting the world ablaze. The Tory government partners, the Lib Dems, the strangest of all bedfellows, seem headed for further punishment at the polls for joining in with them in the first place. But then politicians regularly sell their soul to the highest bidder, and in 2010 Lib Dem leader Nick Clegg did just that, aligning the party with the very conservative Tories. It's time, though, for all politicians to stop the monkey business and for voters to send them angry messages. Labor unions have all but been gutted legislatively in the US and UK, and that means a march towards a Chinese-like market mentality. Pay them peanuts and demand that workers be grateful they even have a job. Well, when I lived and worked in the USA in the 1990s, there were things such as sick leave and vacations. Now, if someone dares complain, they can and will be replaced. So the oligarchs and the plutocrats control all. Their wealth and power grows while the rest of us hang on by a single thread. It was revealed in a study last week that by Think Progress that 50% of U.S. households are just one disaster away from devastation. And sadly, the same is true in the UK and across the EU, even with a much better safety net. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis wrote in 1941, "We can have a democracy in this country, or we can have great wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both." Sadly, he remains right to this day.